Kevin is officially back from vacation, which means it is August and it is time to do our month of what ifs on the Force with Friends podcast. So, Kevin, I'm excited for this month. Like June and July with the Acolyte was kind of like being in a bunker, just taking shots from every direction.
Yeah.
I think this will be a much more like docile month. Lots of fun questions.
Yeah.
All coming. Like we haven't come up with any of these. People actually submitted all 8 questions that we're going through today. So I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I've been looking forward to this since we decided on it, like back in May.
Yeah, no, it'll be fun. It's always fun when you get to just start speculating about random nonsense. And so, and I haven't seen all of them, but I saw a few of them that people were throwing out, and it's some really cool ideas. So thanks to everybody that threw out some ideas, because they're not just like, some of them are the kind of ones you'd expect, but some of them were kind of surprising I hadn't thought about before. So it'll be fun to talk through those things.
No, same here. Now, I will say, as an OCD person that lives with intrusive thoughts, what ifs are my jam, but this time it's going to be fun. Like, I live in a perpetual state of what ifs, and now these are fun Star Wars what ifs. So we're going to start with our very first what if. And this one's going to be so quick, but this one is from Pookie's Pops on Instagram. And this one is essentially, what if R2 wasn't around? How would everybody else fare?
Oh, gosh.
So for me, I don't think Star Wars would last past, episode 1. No R2. They wouldn't make it very long at all.
No, definitely not. I mean, they don't make it out of the trash compactor, right? I mean, that's a pretty quick end right there. I mean, you could just name any time he opens a door or stops something or turns something off or hacks into something.
I mean, the Phantom Menace, he saves their ship like an hour in or something like that.
That's true. Yeah, that's right. That's his introduction, right? So there, the story ends. Padme's dead. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are gone. Anakin's never discovered. Apparently the entirety of the Star Wars plotline relies on R2.
R2-D2. Well, they say that like George Lucas's plans for Star Wars was like you see this like 1,000 years down the road, and R2 is like playing the story to the keeper of the wheels or whatever that are like keeping up with the journal. So it really does revolve around R2. So that was our first question. What if there's no R2? Fun. There's no R2. There's no Star Wars.
There's no Star Wars.
That's a great question, though. That is a great question. So number 2. We have got, and I've got like a notepad full of questions here, but number 2, we have got, it's really a 2-parter, and this is from Ricky with Pop the Bounty Collector. He's been a guest on this show before. Go check him out on YouTube and Instagram. But this one is super interesting. So 1, Qui-Gon survives episode 1, but he joins Count Dooku.
That's interesting. That's tricky.
Well, because does Dooku happen if Qui-Gon lives?
Does Dooku fall to the dark side? Because we find out in Tales of the Jedi, that's a big part of why he finally done with the Order. But at the same time, I could definitely see Qui-Gon and Dooku leaving the Order together. Because they're both fed up.
They're both kind of disenfranchised,
so maybe they don't go dark, but I could totally see them being like, we're done with the Jedi. Like that. I would still see that as a possibility, even if Count Dooku never went to the dark side. That's interesting.
It's such an interesting idea. And I would love, like, if they did do a what if series, kind of like the Marvel that they've got on Disney Plus, and they kind of like said, hey, this whole what if series is based on this. And you got, like an hour and a half of this what if story playing out. It'd be pretty cool. I would like to see this. Now, Ricky did have a part 2. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just thinking though, like if Qui-Gon and Dooku were like, hey, Jedi Order, Jedi Council, you guys are messed up. We're not doing this right. If Qui-Gon trains Obi-Wan and kind of still moves him maybe some his way, he trains Anakin, then maybe you have a group of people who are like, hey, Jedi Council, this is not cool. And maybe the Jedi Council actually gets called out and fixes something. Maybe that would have happened if Qui-Gon and Dooku had stuck around together. I don't know. That's interesting to think about.
Or
Would have
better
solved a lot of
yet,
problems.
what if Dooku goes bad, Qui-Gon joins him, they ditch the rule of two, but you still get Anakin and Obi-Wan. And then you've got the four of them. They could easily take out
pitted
Palpatine,
against each
I
other?
believe. Yeah. Well, I think the
I thought you
four
were
of
going to
them,
say
like,
against each other.
no, well, that in a minute, but the four of them together they would take over easily. So easy.
That would be,
that would be
basically
quick.
start a new order of Jedi or whatever you want, what they'd call themselves. I don't know.
Now, Ricky's part two to this question was what you would say. Eventually, in the prequel trilogy. By the way, we're doing prequel trilogy what ifs today. I haven't said this, but it's prequel trilogy what ifs. So, part two to Ricky's question is eventually in this prequel trilogy where Qui-Gon goes with Dooku, there is a duel with Qui-Gon and Dooku versus Obi-Wan and Anakin.
It we'll say all in their prime state.
Prime. Like say episode 3.
Because if you go Attack of the Clones, Count Dooku already handled the two of them both together.
Same time.
So
we'll say in their prime.
Okay. Because then Anakin does obviously beat Dooku later. Oh man.
Yeah.
That would be crazy. That'd be fun to watch.
It's a coin flip, right?
Have we seen like a good lightsaber battle with 4 people? Like 4 main characters, not just like people who are gonna die really quick? Like is that a thing?
I don't think so.
That would be intense. Can you imagine the 4 of them just like battling each other and switching off and jumping in? And that's what we need. Like this is making me realize we need like a main character 4-person lightsaber battle. Not like people who just get cut down really quick, but like that'd be.
The closest thing is in Rebels. Right, because in that one episode of Rebels, you've got Maul, Kanan, Ezra, and the Inquisitors all at the same time. But that's like the closest thing you've got, I suppose.
That's
Maybe
true.
in the Clone Wars, there's something, but again, I'm not the Clone Wars expert, so
so
that would be awesome to see, though. If it's episode 3, you give the edge to Anakin and Obi-Wan.
Yeah. I mean, Qui-Gon's, I think, probably one of the wisest people there, but that may not necessarily help him against 2
also if he's
veteran,
a bad guy.
At this point, war used to fighting
hardened.
in a war, 2 Jedi hardened. Yeah, I think they'd take it probably in that. Huh.
I mean, you got Anakin as like the greatest lightsaber dueler, and you've got Obi-Wan beats him a couple times on record. Yeah. So like
that's true.
Sounds like Obi-Wan's the greatest dueler. And
Qui-Gon
then you've got Anakin there too.
Who Obi-Wan beats, obviously.
So, I would give it to Anakin and Obi-Wan.
I think they take them. Yeah, I think that would
definitely.
Episode
2, though, it's not even close.
Oh,
not even close if it's Attack of the Clones.
No, not even close. Because Dooku does it by himself in episode 2.
Yeah.
Qui-Gon would just be standing there watching.
They were tired at that point, but yeah, they win. So that was really cool. But now we're going to go on a similar vein, and this one is from Sometimes Brainless on YouTube. This time you were not brainless. You had brains. So Qui-Gon lives in The Phantom Menace, but Obi-Wan dies.
Ooh, reverse. Well, obviously
it changes Anakin.
Qui-Gon goes on a chain. Yeah, he goes on a train Anakin.
Yep.
I've always wondered long term if that makes a difference, though, because I think Qui-Gon is not going to instill in Anakin an adherence to the Council, right? Like he's not going to teach him to obey and listen to the Council without thinking. And so you're still going to have that part of Anakin that really questions everything the Council does. And I think it would become Palpatine's mission to get rid of Qui-Gon. I think that would have been kind of what he needed. And so who knows? Maybe it wouldn't have changed anything. Maybe Palpatine gets Qui-Gon out of the picture. Qui-Gon's taught Anakin, tried to, but if he's following Qui-Gon, he doesn't think highly of the Jedi Council, probably.
Yeah.
So maybe it doesn't change anything.
I'm kind of torn on this one because Dave Filoni seems to believe that it changes everything. Right?
That's
like
true.
The Duel of the Fates. In his mind, Duel of the Fates is the fate of Anakin. It's not the fate of
Yeah.
Qui-Gon or Obi-Wan. So
Right. Yeah.
it does lead you to think that, because Qui-Gon like disagreed with almost everything the council did, right? Like, or not, I wouldn't
Yeah.
say almost everything, but he had some core issues with them. But he also had ways to cope with that and still find the
Yeah.
good in things and all of that. So it almost makes you wonder if not being with like Obi-Wan's a stalwart, right? Like he's
Yeah.
just by the book, by the rules. And that's not what Anakin needed. So maybe Qui-Gon kind of having that flexibility to think and see, okay, yeah, this isn't good, but all these other things are. And so
Yeah.
maybe it gives Anakin like a little bit of nimbleness when it comes to dealing with how rigid the Jedi were. Because Qui-Gon obviously did. And he was, I mean, he was never a master because he was kind of hard headed, but he was still very useful. And I mean, Anakin, he's not going to be a master. So,
Yeah, I think if Qui-Gon stays around for the entirety the way Obi-Wan did, I think it does make a difference.
yeah.
Because I think Qui-Gon's wisdom and his understanding and maybe better compassion for Anakin would make a big difference. It just it depends though. Like, would Qui-Gon last as long in the Clone Wars as Obi-Wan did? Because I would definitely say Obi-Wan's a survivor, right? So I think it just depends on whether Qui-Gon makes it, right? If Qui-Gon makes it to that point, I think Anakin stays on the right road. But if Qui-Gon bites the dust, I feel like maybe nothing changes. So it would just depend.
Yeah, that's a fair assumption. And now it's also interesting, like, with Obi-Wan dying, I'm assuming that means Qui-Gon takes out Maul. So you still have Maul gone. So you
Right.
still have,
I
there
would
has to
think
be a
so.
new apprentice. So you continue the assumption that it's Dooku. Well, that would be a strange dynamic with Dooku being the Sith and then Qui-Gon being the master in that story. That would, I feel like there would be
Yeah.
some story to tell there. And Qui-Gon could have a really hard time with that, just in general. So maybe he doesn't make it because he won't
That would
kill
be
his master.
a good story. But with the other scenarios, same thing. Dooku may not fall if Qui-Gon makes it out.
Yeah.
So then that brings a whole. I don't
Does
even know.
Qui-Gon turn into the apprentice because of that? Does
I mean, I definitely
Palpatine
think
shift his
Palpatine finds
focus?
somebody else. I think
Well,
there'd
yeah,
definitely be another Darth somebody.
yeah.
But yeah, that is. I wonder who would be the next most likely candidate to join Palpatine.
Yeah. It's probably someone we wouldn't know. If it's not Dooku, like it's
That
some,
might be
you know,
true.
like he found Darth Maul out there. So he
Yeah.
finds someone out there
That's
probably. That would have been a good what if
Yep.
question. Someone should have asked that. Next up, this one was asked by a lot of people. This is kind of the classic what if for the prequel era.
Yeah.
And this is animated, but a lot of people ask this. Katie living in Bookland on Instagram. We'll give you the initial credits for it. But Ahsoka never leaves the Jedi Order. Now, I've thought a lot about this one because this is one that pops up all the time. Like, oh, what if she never left? Two directions. One, she doesn't make it because, I mean, the odds aren't great for people making it out of Order 66. Now, the more Disney Plus shows we have, the more Jedi survive. But she doesn't maybe make it. But then you think she handles her own against Maul. But her specific situation of surviving Order 66, because she did still survive Order 66, but the location wise, she has Rex with her, and they have to let Maul out of prison to help her too. So it was like the three of them survive Order 66. So it makes you wonder if she stays in the Order, is she on Mandalore in that perfect situation to where she's like with Maul and Rex and makes it out and goes incognito for a while. If she is, I say she makes it. If she's not, I say she probably dies just like everybody else. A lot of people would say, oh, well, maybe Anakin wouldn't have fallen. This was a Padme thing. So Ahsoka's not going to get in the way of that, I don't think.
Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, and at that point, Anakin's back at the temple anyway. I doubt Ahsoka would just be hanging out with him at the temple, going out. I mean, she probably wouldn't be going there after Sidious, especially. I you think about it though, she does survive in what is not a great place to be during Order 66, which is a Republic cruiser full of of clone troopers.
Clones.
So maybe if she's out on her own though, like if she's on some sort of appointment like some of these other Jedi, like that was kind of also one of the big points of Anakin's training, right? Is like to survive something that's not what everyone else is planning to survive, right?
That's
like
true. We
he
see
specifically trained her. So if it's just her and a group of clone troopers, and I could see her holding her own and getting away where some of the other Jedi wouldn't have been able to. If she's but that's where it would get really interesting if she's at the temple when Anakin comes back on his mission to expunge the Jedi. That would be an interesting confrontation.
Well, at that point, does Anakin even make it out? Because I mean, Ahsoka holds her own with Darth Maul, so I mean, let's say 1-on-1, Anakin eventually gets her, but does Anakin get Ahsoka with all these other Jedi there? If she's, because he has nobody that actually challenges him. But if you've got a primary challenger, like if Anakin or if Yoda and Obi-Wan were there, the Temple March, I mean, the clones still get a ton of people, but I don't think it is quite as effective. Like Obi-Wan and Yoda would still have to retreat after they beat Anakin because of all the clones. But maybe
that's a good point.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know.
Because presumably we assume Anakin is able to just move through the temple like that because all of the seasoned Jedi are away, right? They're all fighting this war for the Republic, which was part of the plan, right? To thin them out and wear them out. And so, if she's there, if anybody else is there, that battle may go very differently, because if he's held up by anybody, it suddenly becomes a numbers game. Yeah, that's interesting.
But and you can say the other way, like, can they actually fight him with clones everywhere too? I don't know. I don't know how that looks.
That's true.
No one else was able to. So
and
I don't know.
I don't think Ahsoka could have prevented him from falling to the dark side once Sidious really had his hooks in on the Padme thing. But it is interesting to think, because I do think he would have had some struggles with that, because he addresses her later and is like, you left me, you abandoned me. In that doesn't he say something along those lines? Or no, she dreams that. She has a vision.
Dreams it in Rebels, right?
She does. And then she fights him, and that's when she's like, I won't leave you again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really seem to care.
Not at that point, no. Though he does seem genuinely pretty crestfallen when she leaves in Clone Wars, right? He's definitely, I think, expecting her to come back and stay at that point, and she doesn't.
That's a good scene.
It is a good scene. Yeah, because they're they're both very different people at that point. Anakin is unsure and in need of friendship, and she's now more certain of herself and kind of split from the Jedi. So it's a really good scene.
Yeah. Well, that's like, if it weren't for season 7, right? That's the last season. Season 7. If it weren't for that, that's the best scene in the Clone Wars. But then 7 happens.
That's true.
But you also forget that she's like, 14, 15, 16 during all this, and holding her own. That's just crazy. But it's probably a different story for a different day. But the verdict is, coin toss, we probably lean towards her surviving, just giving her skills. But we also agree that the situation she found herself in with the help she had was probably a good situation. Like, even though it's a bad situation, you weren't alone. You had a little bit going for you.
In that situation, I don't think she makes it out of the cruiser without the help. I mean,
when Moss throws that door,
that's great.
That's so cool. I love that. Okay, so next, we're going to keep it animated here.
Ooh.
And this is the last animated question here. This is from Tiara with Crafting on Ilum. She was on last week, if anyone recalls. Check her out on Instagram and YouTube, and I think she said TikTok as well. Obi-Wan leaves the order for Satine. So we lost Kevin there. Not sure as far as the technical difficulties there goes. He may hop back on. He was using a different computer, but I'm going to run this down solo until then. Maybe the rest of the podcast. Maybe not. But we were talking about Obi-Wan leaving the order for Satine. So in my opinion, if that does happen, I think it's a big deal in the Clone Wars, obviously. Like, Obi-Wan's a great general. The impacts on Anakin would probably be pretty big. I mean, he for sure still goes to the dark side if he loses the influence of Obi-Wan. I think Obi-Wan definitely is like the Jedi, going by the rules and all of that. But I do think he still has that place where Anakin kind of listens to him, confides in him, things like that. So, I don't think it's good for Anakin. Kind of like what we were saying. What if he leaves and then Maul still kills Satine? What kind of a dark place does that put Obi-Wan in? I think that's a really interesting idea to explore for sure, because does it push him to the dark side? Does he go on like this vengeance thing against Maul, and him and Maul are both just going across the galaxy wanting to kill each other? That's really interesting. Does maybe it make Obi-Wan jaded towards the Jedi? I don't know. I don't think there's a good way that this goes, if that makes sense. So definitely a good question. Yeah, I think that would be cool to see in a what if series if we ever get that. Moving on to question 6. So we have, this is from Dark Vortex 2410 on YouTube. And the question is, what if Anakin stays on the light side, but Obi-Wan is the one who falls to the dark side? So that's an interesting scenario, because Anakin falls to the dark side and Obi-Wan still beats him. So does that mean if Obi-Wan goes to the dark side, he's going to beat Anakin anyways? So he's like joining Palpatine? I think if you take that line of thought, then I would say things kind of turn out in a similar situation, right? So you've got Palpatine and Obi-Wan eventually take down the Jedi Order. They don't stand a chance. I think Anakin obviously super powerful, but Obi-Wan can hold his own too. So I think you probably have a similar result there, unless, of course, Obi-Wan loses because he's kind of aggressive with the dark side, similar to Anakin. So that's an idea as well, I would say. I think it could go either way, but I still think if it's Obi-Wan falling, we see the Jedi Order fall with him. I think Palpatine still gets all of his plans going. Now, looking kind of down the line, though, what does that mean for the Skywalkers? So you wanted to keep Luke and Leia a secret from Anakin and Palpatine. So Obi-Wan and Yoda do that, and Bail Organa. But now, hey, I think we have Kevin back. But now Anakin is gone. So no one knows about the kids with Padme. So what does Padme do there? I mean, you assume she lives because Anakin doesn't take her out. And I do think Anakin falls if Obi-Wan's the one who falls. So maybe the kids still get taken away and hidden. But do any Jedi know to actually go and train Luke and Leia? So that's an interesting thought there as well. What the whole fate of this galaxy is. Because if you don't have a Luke and a Leia coming up down the pipeline, does the Empire ever lose? Like, that's a long game type of question if Obi-Wan falls to the dark side, because I do believe they are very successful if Obi-Wan falls. So that is quite the rabbit hole to go down. Dark Vortex 2410. Kevin's back.
Oh man, listen. Sometimes technology just doesn't work.
Hey, that's okay. I went ahead and answered the Sabine question, or the Satine question, not Sabine, but Satine. So I moved into Anakin staying light and Obi staying dark. So my reasoning, my thought process, it's still very successful for Sidious. It all works out. I think Obi-Wan still takes out Anakin. The curveball is what happens with Luke and Leia. So obviously, like, Obi-Wan and Yoda and Bail Organa take Luke and Leia away, and they preserve that hope to take out the Empire. Now, you assume Padme lives, so what happens there? Like, does she know to take the kids somewhere? Because this stays very under wraps. So what happens there? I think Luke and Leia may just turn out to live normal lives and never get in the fight, and the Empire
That's true.
rules forever.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that would, because I feel like, well, yeah, because here's the thing: who knows about the kids? Nobody, because Obi-Wan knew,
Nobody. Probably Rex because he had to
obviously,
listen
in
to it. But
Revenge of the
other than that,
Sith.
but I say he probably doesn't
Oh no,
learn
that's what I'm
though
saying.
because he
But
falls
that's the
before.
only reason they were able to like hide and protect the kids is because he knew
Yeah.
they were kids. In Revenge of the Sith, and he obviously takes her and rescues her. But
Yep.
man, that yeah, do they ever get discovered if they're not like put into hiding? And does Obi-Wan go looking for him?
I think that's the biggest implication.
I don't know, man. Do you think he goes looking for Padme though?
Well, so that's another question. Does Padme even make it out? I don't know. Maybe Padme doesn't survive this whole deal because she
Yeah.
would for sure fight back. So I don't. I think it's if Obi-Wan is like the Vader,
So
I think it's very successful for the Emperor.
are we assuming that
I
Obi-Wan has
think
done all the things Anakin did? Like, did he wipe out the Jedi, Order 66? All that's okay.
that was my assumption. Is Palpatine gets his plans going? Because I mean, if you're not getting Anakin, Obi-Wan
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
the next best warrior choice. So I think it would be an incredibly successful venture for Sidious.
I will say though, if Padme survives, I could see her seeking out any Jedi that are left, because I feel like she wouldn't really have any other. Yeah, because
Kind of taking the
what
Bail
else is she
Organa
going to do at
role.
that point? If Anakin's been killed, Obi-Wan's turned to the dark side. You would think that her natural
Yeah.
inclination would be to find a Jedi. Be like, hey, got these kids.
Yeah. Well, yeah. She's for sure like in the the hidden path. She gets involved with that, I would say, in that situation. But you don't have an Obi-Wan and a Yoda bringing up a Luke and Leia, so I think that maybe Palpatine chose the wrong guy. I think if he goes after Obi-Wan, maybe it works out forever until
I think you're
Obi-Wan
probably right.
takes out Palpatine.
Because even with the existence of Luke and Leia, they don't stand a chance without someone to train them. So bad choice by Palpatine.
That's a really good question. The next question plays on that a little bit, kind of. What if Anakin isn't Vader, but someone else is? So you have to make a few assumptions on this. One, it works out the same for whoever it is. So, like, okay, they take that Vader mantle and is able to take everything out. Or, and I'm assuming they mean like take down the whole order with them. So I think that's kind of like what we just said. It's probably going to go pretty well because you probably lose the Luke and Leia plan. And that's what ultimately ends the Empire is Luke and Leia. So I think if anyone else is Vader besides Anakin, you may not get to that point. So turns out Palpatine choosing the chosen one was the biggest flaw in the plan.
He thought that it would be removing the problem, but he really just kept the problem alive till he could fulfill the prophecy.
Just made it. And it's not even like he kept it alive very long. It's like 25 years. Like you think like, oh, it's this big long whatever.
Yeah.
The Empire lasted
like
25 years.
Unfortunately.
It's not.
Who
and then it lasts for like another 25 minutes in the sequels, and then it's gone.
A Vader type character.
You've got your Quinlan Vos, obviously. You've got your Asajj, I suppose. Not Dooku. I mean, it had to be someone we don't know. It would not be Obi-Wan. Like you say it would. Ahsoka, she's disenfranchised.
What would it take
Could
for
be her.
Ahsoka to fall to the dark side?
It'd take a lot, I think, because obviously she goes through a lot and never does.
Few with the highest moral character, I'd say.
You gotta have a loose cannon.
It really
Anakin
does.
to make this work. That's kind of the whole thing. Is you need you gotta have a guy that's just right there on the edge,
willing to, good gosh, really go off the deep end. For love, it's all for love.
Yeah. Well, I mean, were any of the rest of them secretly married to a senator? That's where Obi-Wan maybe comes in with Satine. Yeah, maybe that's how he falls. Yeah. But
Anakin, with his attachment issues, with his mistrust of the Jedi Council, with his, I mean, you could go on and on. He really is kind of the perfect person to fall.
Yeah.
Although going back, I think Obi-Wan could fall.
And that's
though.
why this
works. I missed the whole conversation on Maul and Satine, but if he left the Jedi Order and then Maul killed Satine and then
it was a quick
he killed Maul, maybe Palpatine's interested in him
to take him down. Obi-Wan is the only other right answer, I think.
The way the story plays out, I don't know who else could have found himself in that position, being courted by Palpatine to join the Sith. I don't know.
Unless he makes a Star Killer type,
introduce a new character.
That could be it, but that's a whole different story. Yeah. Let's get to the main event. This was my favorite question. So this is the thumbnail. This is the whole deal. On Mustafar, Padme joins Anakin. So Anakin does what he wants to do. He saves her. Essentially, she joins him. So I'm taking this along the lines of she doesn't get force choked, she doesn't get heartbroken, and she doesn't die in childbirth. So Padme's there. I think Anakin probably takes out Obi-Wan on Mustafar there. If Padme, you don't go through that whole process, she maybe could even call in for some backup on that. So I think the real question, if Padme joins Anakin, and this is from Gonk Droid Army, by the way. So Gonk Droid Army has some questions we're going to feature later as well when we go through the original trilogy. It is. So Anakin and Padme rule the galaxy. I go under the assumption that they eventually start gunning for Palpatine. I mean, I don't think Palpatine's going to be cool with Padme playing in this equation because he's trying to get rid of her the whole time. She is the thorn in his side.
Yeah, he's got the Trade Federation trying to assassinate her.
You go...
He obviously wants one.
Yeah. Well, you know what they say, if you go after the king, you best not miss. So do Anakin and Padme go after the king, and do they miss when they do? I think non-Darth Vader Anakin probably does take out Palpatine.
Oh, Mace Windu had him beat, right? I mean, it was because Anakin's the reason, right?
For Anakin, yeah.
I think, after a few years of honing his skills and plotting and planning, I think he could definitely take out Palpatine. The big question is what in the world pushes Padme to join him? It's against all of her every moral fiber in her body.
Same thing that pushes. She's a lot more secure of a character than Anakin, that's for sure.
But she also develops a significant attachment to him too. I do think he could. Because that whole scene gets thrown off when Obi-Wan shows up, right? Then Anakin loses it. He turns on her, and then obviously once she gets force choked, right? She's probably not going to join him. That kind of. If Obi-Wan never shows up, I feel like he could convince her, hey, Palpatine's bad. I'm a better choice, right? We could fix all these issues, right? Because she's obviously not happy with the Republic Senate. She thinks they're all a bunch of pansies who won't do the right thing.
Right.
I could see maybe between siding with Anakin because she loves him and just the idea that, hey, we could have the power to fix all this stuff, right? I think that might draw her over.
Aggressive negotiations.
So many great lines from those movies. So yeah.
Yes. That's actually not a bad one as far as the courting lines.
Not nearly as bad. So, I could see that. I wouldn't. It would take the right scenario. Again, I think if Obi-Wan shows up, it goes bad every time because Anakin goes crazy. That would be interesting, man.
Yeah. Well, I still think Obi-Wan can show up, but what if the conversation they have prior before he starts force choking her, she just is I'm going to join you. Okay, then Obi-Wan does show up. Anakin isn't really thrown off because he's okay, well, yeah, she's here. She's joined me. All I've got to do is take out Obi-Wan and I've got what I want versus that unbalanced kind of that rage he goes into. So I think if she just joins right away, which is not likely, but let's say for the what if she did, again, he beats Obi-Wan. The long-term issue I see is raising these two Sith children. Eventually, they're going to come after Anakin, right? You have just got the most dysfunctional family in the galaxy running the galaxy. Does the Empire even make it 25 years that we have in the in the original, trilogy. It makes you wonder, like,
another
hey,
interesting. So
what
let's say
happens
they
with all
do
them?
take out Palpatine, right? And they're at the head of this galactic empire. Is Palpatine enough
Yeah.
of a, or not Palpatine? Is Padme enough of a balance to Anakin to where maybe it's not the worst thing? Maybe some of her influence of, hey, we're in power now, so now we're going to fix these things we said we were going to fix. Does that work? Right? Like that's the question always with a dictator, right? Can a dictator actually do anything good? That would
Can
be
they be a
interesting
good
though,
one?
because she
Yeah,
definitely balances
that's
Anakin
true.
out.
That's true.
And I don't think, even if she joins him, I don't think she ever loses her sense of what's maybe just to an extent. I mean, she'd have to give into it some, but it
Yeah,
would be an
yeah,
interesting thing to see her play the antagonist to
yeah.
him as the ruling figure of the Empire. Maybe it would have gotten better. I don't know.
I like the idea there, especially because when you go to episode 2 and he's kind of talking how he thinks things should
Yeah,
be run, like he wants to do good things, he just wants to be out of the
yeah.
way of the diplomatic process of it. So, eh, but again, can a dictator ever be good? That's the $1,000,000 question. Um, can two dictators be
If
good?
you just
Probably
keep
not.
adding
I don't
one, does
know.
it get
So,
every
yeah.
time?
Does it get better if they're married? I don't know.
Uh,
Have we ever had a married dictator? I'm sure history
but
says
man, you got to
yes.
think though, if
So,
Anakin assumes that
yeah,
position, like who takes him down? Especially if he has kids and starts like his own little Force empire. Like who's taking down the Skywalker family?
it would be as yeah. I mean, you get into that classic, like
Yeah,
how kings and rulers of old, the kids are always gunning for the parents, and so that's just
think so.
what it turns into. It turns into some war of attrition that way. But also you've got like force sensitive kids, kind of like what you're getting at. They've
Yeah.
got no rules. They're going to have force sensitive kids. It's just going to
Can,
keep going. And
can you
so
imagine trying to
a
overthrow
mess happens.
Anakin, Luke, and Leia all trained as Jedi? Not Jedi, as Force users. That'd be pretty formidable.
And Padme
Yeah,
running the government side of
man.
things.
That I don't know. This might be the empire that sticks. It would have to be
It could
internal
be. It may be
implosion
messy, but it
for that one to fall
sticks.
apart, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Which would be the way it would happen. Now, you want to talk about like George Lucas calling it a
Yeah.
soap opera, like a space
Yep.
opera? Man,
Yeah.
follow that
Just-
family in charge. That would be.
It would be just like a
soap
whole
opera.
It's like the Star Wars royal family.
But I do say
I think so.
They definitely do take over. Naboo turns into the home base probably, and from there, I mean, it's just the possibilities are endless. I would think. But Anakin is still
Yeah,
disenfranchised with the Jedi. He still thinks they're terrible, so he's still gonna probably be trying to wipe them all out. So there's still that.
That's true.
Still that to deal with.
Yeah. Also, is there? I mean, man, what does a rebellion look like at that point? Not effective. You take out Luke and
I mean, Bail
Leia.
Organa would still try his plans. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you take out the winners, yeah. So I mean, they turn into like a Saw Gerrera type thing. Just kind of, I mean, the rebellion outside. If you take away Rogue One, they were not going to do anything. So you've got this Death Star becoming its own thing. So now, does the Death Star continue?
I would think so.
Probably so.
Yeah.
Because it was already going on. So it does make you wonder, like, if the rebellion just keeps kind of kicking it down the road a little bit, and you've got these little cells, and they just never get anything done. It probably just turns into stuff like that. Because if you don't have a Luke and Leia, nothing happens. But you got Ahsoka out there. You've got, you've got Kanan. You've got things like that. So I suppose there could a Kanan Ahsoka stand up to that.
I don't think
know.
so.
It would be interesting to see.
Like
it's a lot to
like a non-Vader Anakin, right? And his twin children trained in the Force. Yeah, like
his non-Vader Luke and Leia.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That story would have to be corralling all the leftover Jedi in the galaxy, right? It would be that kind of thing.
Plus about 1,000, yeah. They would topple from the inside out. That's the thing. They would rule the galaxy It would be messy. It may or may not actually last. We don't know, because there would be all kinds of issues. Or at least with the two of them, it may not actually last.
Do you think the remaining Jedi would be able to sway the other Force users in the galaxy to join them? Like, that'd be cool, right? If you had all the Force users in the galaxy aligned to take down the Skywalker Empire, that'd be wild.
I still wouldn't.
Jedi
still
Night
work.
Sisters.
Still wouldn't work. Death Star still is there because Luke doesn't shoot it. I don't think. Pretty crucial if you don't take out the Death Star, it doesn't work. There. So that's yeah. And Luke does it. So man, I would love to see that play out though. Like, that's the what if I want of any of them. That's the one.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's why I saved it for last. That's the one. So that's this week's prequel what if. Next week is going to be the original trilogy, What If. The following week will be the sequel trilogy, and then the last week will be anything we missed along the way that didn't just fit kind of into any of those boxes, or if there's something new going on in Star Wars, we'll talk about it. But that was it for today. Let us know, looking ahead to next week, some original trilogy what if situations you would like to talk about in the comments. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and we will catch you next time.